Okay, hey y'all, I'm Anthony, I'm the dietitian at Tennessee Tech, and here we have our students. There's Louisa and Tara. Louisa's doing her last rotation for sports nutrition with me, and what we're going to do is we're going to talk about calculating sweat rate. And so I wanted to make a video for any other nutrition students that wanted to check this out or interested in sports nutrition. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about like why hydration is important, and we're not going to go into why it's important for like health reasons. Like let's just stick with like performance, okay? Like obviously we know you're going to die if you get dehydrated enough. But the general consensus is beyond a 2%, oops, I put 20% there, beyond a 2% body weight loss during exercise from sweating excessively is going to result in a loss of performance. And I think the first studies done on that showed that like sprinting ability was reduced by a pretty significant factor, not just statistically significant, but like something that would say like, hey, as a coach, like you want to pay attention to this. Okay, so we're going to look at that as kind of our threshold for that. So let's just take an athlete example here. Okay, so let's say we have a 170-pound athlete. Okay, and so let me make sure this is okay. So we have a 170-pound athlete, and we're getting this weight after they void their bladder. Okay, so they're going to use the bathroom, and they're going to weigh in with minimal clothing. Okay, and I'll explain like why that's important. Is this oh, this has autofocus. I need to take that off. Okay, great. So they have minimal clothing, and let's say after, we're just going to do this for like simple math, they have a 1-hour workout, and let's say that they drink, I don't know, 16 ounces of fluid. Okay. And so afterwards, what we're going to have them do is we're going to have them basically strip their clothing off and then towel off. So we don't want any of that sweat or anything extra on them, because that's going to kind of throw off the results a little bit, especially since some people are like real heavy sweaters, especially if like they have long hair. Like that can add a pound, right? So let's say afterwards they end up weighing, I don't know, like 164 pounds. Okay. All right, so what we want to do is to calculate the sweat rate, we want to take the difference in weight here. So the difference in body weight is, what is that, 6 pounds, right? Okay. So then we're also going to convert the fluid that they drank into whatever weight measurement that we're using, and we're going to subtract that as well. Okay. The reason is because they ingested this during the workout, so on the scale, that's not really showing like how much fluid they lost because they gained some back. Okay, so 16 ounces equals 1 pound. And so we're going to say the change in body weight was actually equal to 7 pounds. Does that make sense? You follow me so far? Okay, so 164, and we subtract that extra pound, 163, which would equal a 7-pound weight loss. Okay, so this is for 1 hour. Okay, so now we know that in 1 hour they're losing 7 pounds, and so let's convert this back to ounces. So what's 7 pounds times 16 ounces, since there's 16 ounces in a pound? Anybody have a calculator handy? Because I'm not going to do this in my head.
That is 112.
Okay, so they need to consume 112 ounces of fluid, or this is their sweat loss. Okay, 112 ounces. Now we can also convert this to milliliters or liters if we wanted to. That's, you should know how to do that by this point. Okay. The other thing we want to pay attention to is we want to look at the starting number versus the 7-pound weight loss. Okay, so they have the 163, and we want to make sure that this is paying attention to this 2% threshold here. So what we're going to do is we're going to take 163. Do you have your calculator handy? And we're going to divide that by 170. And what's that give us?
0.95.
Okay, so that gives us 0.95, which means that they had a 5% change in body weight, which means that they would have a loss in performance. Does that make sense? Okay, so we just take the ending body weight, we divide it by the initial, okay, and that gives us a percentage number. So they have 0.95, they have 95% of the body weight remaining, so 5% was lost, and because that's over that 2% threshold, we know that, okay, like it's really important that you consume more fluid, okay? Now, this 112 ounces per hour, okay, which is what we're going to give them to, like, for this athlete to take with them when they're training. Let's say this is like a cyclist, okay? So this is beneficial for different reasons. Number one, it kind of gives that athlete like a goal of like how much they need to be drinking per hour. So if they're used to drinking a certain amount every half hour, or for this athlete, maybe his thirst response wasn't enough to keep him drinking enough. So we would like want to coach him on how he needs to do that. And the other thing is for like endurance athletes, like you don't want to load them up with any more water than you have to, because that's extra weight. That's extra weight on the bike. I mean, these guys are paying thousands of dollars for these carbon fiber bikes and all that sort of stuff. So you certainly don't want to add any extra weight than you have to. Okay, so let's look at, let me make sure my things are here. Okay, so let's look at a different kind of metric here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave up this 112 ounces per hour. Okay, and let's talk about like carbohydrate utilization. Okay, so without like getting into citing like specific research, the general consensus or what's been shown in the research is that for like very intense exercise, between 60 to 90 grams of carbohydrate per hour is going to be the maximum that's going to be absorbed and utilized to sustain exercise after glycogen has been depleted. Okay, so after that first hour of exercise, so beyond 60 minutes, we need to start like refueling because glycogen like has been depleted. So 60 to 90 grams of carbohydrate per hour. This 60 gram is going to be more reflective if we're just doing this from glucose, but we can increase the protein transporters in the gut if we have a combination of glucose plus other forms of sugar. Okay, and you know, and Gatorade is a very common sports drink, and it provides that. So if we have 112 ounces, so this is why I had you look up the Gatorade beforehand. So we said that a Gatorade, a 32-ounce Gatorade, right? Okay, so we'll start here. So 112 ounces per hour, right? And off to the side, we know that Gatorade has what? It's 11 grams of carbohydrate per 16 ounces, right? Per cup. Per 8 ounces. No, it was per 16 because we looked at the 32 ounces. Do you have that? Are you privy to that? Let me check here real quick because I just had it up. Okay, 12 ounces. 12 ounces has 22 grams of carbohydrates. Okay, so Gatorade. So for 12 ounces equals 22 grams of carbohydrate. Okay, so you see what we're getting at here? We're gonna like bring all three of these things together. So what I want you to do is divide 112 by 12, and what does that give us?
9.3.
It gives us 9.3. So in this hour, if we were to consume all 112 ounces of fluid via Gatorade, we could take this factor of 9.3 and multiply that by 22 grams of carbohydrate, and what does that give us?
9.3.
9.3 times 22.
That would give us 204.
204? Okay. So that would give us 204 grams of carbohydrate, okay, which would be over the 90 grams of carbohydrate here. So we could divide that by half and say we will either use diluted Gatorade, okay, or we could use water for the first half and Gatorade for the second half after the first 60 minutes of exercising, assuming that they're they're still sweating at that rate. We could do that there. So we would say for this individual, we could do let's just say 60 for easy math. We'll say 60 ounces of water plus 60 ounces of Gatorade would get us to that about 60 grams of carbohydrate per hour. Okay, or we could do a little bit more Gatorade, say like 90 ounces of Gatorade and 30 ounces of water if we wanted to get closer to that 90 grams of carbohydrate per hour. Okay, so this would be like a good starting point, right? And then let's say, okay, maybe our athlete can only consume X amount of ounces of fluid before like feeling too like waterlogged or just feeling too full. And we could say, okay, how could we supplement as much fluid as we can to kind of mitigate some of the sweat loss, and then maybe add in like some snacks, like some portable, like Fig Newtons, gummy bears, or goos, or like whatever they would do there. So just some math with calculating sweat rate and carbohydrate usage so that we could use a sports drink in there, and just kind of factoring all those things in. We're going to use this usually mostly for like endurance. This is going to be like an endurance athlete, okay? But we still would like factor in, let's say it's like a soccer match or basketball, or or like cross country, right? So some of the fields we have here at Tech, or some of these sports that we have here at Tech, we would kind of estimate, maybe it's just like by watching practices or like seeing like how each individual athlete like plays in a game, to be able to come up with a specific amount that they would get the best utilization but not like over consume anything as well. Do you have any questions? Does this seem pretty simple? Okay, that's it.